Oh yeah.
waking up with a frozen sleeping bag, because when I started in the winter,
Yeah.
or closer to the winter, and so I literally had a empty metal shell van without any kind of support there for the warmth. And I had to go up to Minnesota. That was one of my first loads, and it was a record-breaking winter at that time.
Welcome to the ThinkFreight podcast. I'm your host, Thomas Werdine, and it's my pleasure to have my friend, Andrei Hippix, the founder of Hippix Logistix. Andrei, thanks for coming on the podcast today. Happy Friday.
Hey, Thomas. Yes, thank you for inviting me. It's been a long time coming. We've had a little back and forth to get it to it, but I'm definitely appreciative of the opportunity, and I'm excited to share this time with you and have a great conversation. Hopefully that can be beneficial to some and just interesting for others.
I think that you've got a very interesting story to tell. You and I have talked for the last couple months and just kind of become friends and kind of bounce ideas every once in a while off each other. I think that, like I said, you've got a very interesting story. So I want to dive right into your background, Andrei, and kind of how did you find yourself? How did you find yourself in freight and logistics? It's a very interesting industry. So how did you get here? What's your path?
Yeah. Thanks for asking that question. It's quite a longer one. And I can start just from related stuff to transportation, where it really took off as transportation, or I can give you a little precept to even how that got to that place. Which route would you like to go?
Give us the pre leading all the way up.
Cool. So I'll start with the pre. So transportation was more for me a way to travel. I'm a traveler, and I traveled on foot. I traveled on longboard. I traveled in a car. And back in the day, I think I was still at high school. I was just liking the idea of, being able to get a van before even van life became a thing, and just travel around the country. And so that just was an idea that intrigued me. I even thought I was going to do it, and I ended up doing something completely else, which was traveling on a longboard across the United States of America, which technically is kind of almost on foot. But that idea of having a van under your feet, which is your home, was really interesting to me. And so many years passed, and back in 2018, I was traveling in Europe. At that time, I was with my guitar, my suitcase, and an amp. I let go of all of my previous possessions, and I was just going to go and travel the country and busk and be a troubadour for a while. And so upon my coming back to the United States of America to visit who is my now wife, and at that time was a girl with whom I got to reconnect, and I will, easily say my soulmate. I got to visit her in Iowa back in 2018 when she was studying. And that was after we already traveled together in Europe and in the United States of America. And so when I visited her, I knew I was going to go back down to Nashville, because I lived in Nashville before I left to the U.S. to the European travel. And so I was going to go to Nashville, do some gigs there, and then go probably to South America. I don't know. Like, the world was open, the world was my oyster.
No plan. Just wanted to travel and like live freely and do what you wanted to do.
Exactly. Yeah. And, and kind of like answer the calling of my service at that time, which was musically speaking to the multitudes. And so I come to Nashville, I'm doing my gig, and then get a call from, who's my wife now, Chanel. And she's like, Andrei, I think we may have conceived a child. Our first one at that time. And I'm thinking, okay, you sure? So, I've never gone through that, by the way, like that whole, like planning of being with a woman and there's a family and there's potentially a child. Like, I've never had that experience. So I'm thinking, okay, well, how do we find out? And she like takes, this pregnancy test and shows me like, I think this means, we're pregnant. So right in a blink of an eye, I knew my life was about to change, and I was to embark on a completely new journey that I didn't, I don't think I really anticipated, thought, but obviously certain things have certain consequences. And, for me, it was a matter of just to accept that. And so when I accepted it, I knew things were going to need to change. And so what happened was, at first I knew I couldn't just get a job. Like I'm going to have a family, a child, a wife who is finishing her master's degree. I need to do something that's going to propel me. And at that time, I got into an idea of Airbnb management. And so I invested some of the money that I had, kind of like the last of my money, really. But I was like, I believed in myself. I believed in the calling. And so I said, I'm going to do the best that I can. I invested into that. And so I think around Christmas, New Year's time came in, and Chanel and I, we were going to go travel to New York to visit my family and celebrate Christmas and New Year's there. And so when we did, I had a buddy of mine who, and I'm not from the US originally. I migrated here from 2005. And this was a guy who was basically my first friend that I ever met and made in the United States of America, lived in New York. And so he's like, hey, look, you guys are coming to New York. Would you like to meet with a friend of mine? You've met him a couple of years back. He's in transportation, and he was delivering packages in his cargo van for somebody. He wants to get his own. So basically, he wanted to become an owner operator, and he just needs help. Like, he doesn't speak too well English. He doesn't know how, what it means to like get a loan from the bank. Sort of logistical things of getting started. And back then, like, I didn't really think too much of it. My mind was set on Airbnb management. Like, I'm going to make this happen. I'll do whatever it takes. But my wife and I had just an out call to the maker, to the creator, God. And we're like, hey, God, look, if you have something better for us, better plans than we have, like, put in our lap, please. Let us see it, and we'll do the best we can to make sure it stems into an opportunity. And so we met up with the guy at a coffee shop in Brighton Beach. We sat across each other right by the train line. So every time, a train passes, you can't hear each other.
It's rumbling.
It's rumbling. Yeah. The teacups and coffee cups are shaking. And so all of a sudden,
I've been in that area.
Yeah. It's, I didn't live in Brighton Beach ever, but I've had quite a few friends there. So I've navigated that area as well quite a bit. It's quite a melting pot.
Oh yeah.
And and so we are sitting across each other, and my wife is not speaking Russian really well. The guy speaks Russian. I speak Russian. And then his name is Anatoly, by the way. Shout out to you, buddy. And so I'm literally translating a conversation between my wife and him, and it's just back and forth. I'm just literally translating. And so we end the conversation, he leaves, we're sitting, we're thinking, well, we prayed for it. Maybe this is it. And literally that's where it all started from. I helped him. Went to drive for somebody, at first as a driver, learned that portion, then became an owner operator. Then Anatoly went and did something else of his own. And then from that point on, we transitioned and grew into a company. And Anatoly became an owner operator later on, who's working with us now. And it started from there. I mean, of course, there's a lot more details to it, but that's literally the start. The New Year's, Christmas of 2018, 2019, and the call that we sent out and the response we got.
I really find that interesting and inspiring. Interesting and inspiring. So, how long? You said that you went and drove for a little bit. How long did you go out and drive before you started your own company?
Yeah, great question. So I was driving first a couple of months. It took a couple of months, I would say about 2 months. I drove for a owner operator from upstate New York, and he was kind of between California and upstate New York. He's a Ukrainian guy. And I drove his Sprinter, and that was that was an interesting experience because I actually got to test things out, and I got to see what the market is, what the job
Absolutely.
really looks like, and what are the revenue. Because I was getting percentages as a
Mhm.
driver, and so I could technically know what the actual amount is.
Yeah,
I
sure.
knew what the companies I'm working with, dispatchers that I'm booking the jobs with, and first I was just driving, and then I was also bidding on the jobs myself. So that was a couple of month span, and then it got into a point where I was in the process of Chanel and I. We wanted to get married, and we were like, okay, we need to save up a little bit of money. I'm on the road working all the time. She's in Iowa, finishing
Yeah.
her degree while growing in her middle section of her body, and so I knew that it was a time where I needed to transition to owner operator, and what really pushed me to become an owner operator at that point was. Um, the guy I worked for went back to Ukraine home, and he was there for over a month. And that whole time, I didn't hear from him, and I was supposed to get paid weekly. And so there's a month goes by, and
Oh
I'm
wow.
not making money. I'm paying for fuel. I'm not really like a little bit concerned there, because I
Yeah,
just came
absolutely.
from, traveling. I didn't have a whole lot of money at all, and I just invested thousands of dollars into Airbnb. And so that was kind of benevolent kick in the butt. It's like, okay, you got to get off this van right now. You got to go take the loan, get the van yourself, and become an owner operator. And that was it. And so as an
Wow.
owner operator, I was operating from, I think, roughly around March of 2019. And the first load we booked as a company was January 29, 2021. So
Oh,
from
okay.
March of 2019, I was driving for about a year and a half. And then when I got off the road, I kind of more so focused on, all right, what does it even take, to like start a company,
Right.
to have the vehicles, to get the jobs, bring in the business, like, because we didn't have anybody telling us anything. It was
Yeah.
literally just on the ground, figuring things out on our own, just paying attention, who says what our other drivers are saying, what names of
Mm.
companies just spring up and are being, sprinkle on top of this cake. And we kind of, started from there. So I would say overall about a year and a half, a little more, maybe year and 8 months overall of consistent driving. But when I was driving though, I was nonstop. Like when my wife gave a
Yeah.
birth, to Agili, which was in July 2019, uh, about 2 weeks passed. And like, I had to go. Like, I had to go to make money, support them. And
Yeah.
I was gone on the road for that whole time. I didn't come back home to like stay home for more than a month, probably. Yeah, like that whole year and a half passed, and only then I got home. from from the beginning till the end, it was maybe at most week at home, at times,
Wow.
at most. After about a year of operation as a single owner operator in the road, I knew that I needed to expand. And at that point, I was ready to invest into the second vehicle. And out of everybody who I reached out to, the people that really joined me and who eventually became my partners, and without whom Hippix Logistix would not be what it is today, is my brother-in-law Joseph Carnes and his girlfriend at that time, who's now fiance, Gianna Court. And it was a very interesting time because while I was driving, I told Chanel, my wife, that, hey, like, what about your brother? Let's see if he'd be interested in this. And at that time, he was living in Florida. I don't think driving for him was even really anything he was interested in, but I do believe he wanted to go and maybe travel or visit some other places. And this seemed like a good opportunity for him to get out of Florida, where he lived most of his life, get on the road, and then also, generate some income. And so he joined me because it was COVID at that time. His girlfriend Gianna, who was living in New York and was full time working as a AFLAC representative, could work remotely. And so they basically hopped on the first vehicle. They dropped me off. So I went to Florida, met them, We all got on a vehicle together. All three of us were driving a Sprinter and getting the loads, um, delivering the loads basically all the way up until Connecticut, where I went to pick up the second vehicle, which was a Ram ProMaster 2020 small box truck. And then they set off on their own, and I got on the box truck and went on my own. And then from that point on, we were on the road up until January of 2021. We were just driving and figuring out how to, start a company and transition into becoming a carrier. And by January 29, 2021, we got everything set up. And so our first load was booked as a Hippix Logistix, and at that time it was through B&B Top Management LLC, which was the LLC I opened up for Airbnb. We were doing business as Hippix Logistix. Was the first load booked, and so from that point on, Joe was on the road, Gianna was on the road and dispatching. I was building a company at that point. I think I was already able to find a driver for our second vehicle, and we just started humbly, and little by little we started adding more vehicles, more people, owner operators working with us, and throughout that process, Joe Gianna got off the vehicle as well, and then full time started building Hippix Logistix. So really, three of us, made it happen to what it is today. I'm really grateful for their partnership, for their support, and the roles that they occupy, because all of us really went on a leap of faith. Neither one of us was promised any revenue or any income. To be honest, it took us about a year of working for free, building Hippix Logistix, and just making money from the vehicles that we had. But in terms of like the company income making as the owners, we made $0 for the whole year of work, and then only in the second year, 2022, we started generating little by little, and it's been a long process, which a lot of people don't even see in the back end, because they think, oh, the companies make so much money when they're in the position of a driver. But it's really, I think, part of that disconnect is because people don't get real story of what's happening in the back end.
That's
Um,
tough.
and it was interesting. Yeah, it was a very challenging time. My wife was home with a baby on her own, and then we had to figure that out.
Yeah.
I was on the road nonstop, and I enjoyed it. I'm a traveler. I like not taking a shower for a couple of days and sleeping in a rough area, and
Oh yeah.
waking up with a frozen sleeping bag, because when I started in the winter,
Yeah.
or closer to the winter, and so I literally had a empty metal shell van without any kind of support there for the warmth,
Right.
and I had to go up to Minnesota. That was one of my first loads,
Oh
and
man.
it was a record breaking winter at that time. It was like -20 something like that, and I remember it was quite an experience.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
but from that, it built us up to kind of start from that resilience to where
Absolutely.
we just kept on pushing through. Like, if we can handle that, we can definitely weather the easier, simpler times. So I think
Absolutely.
driving, being on the road, is really, no matter what position you are. I don't know. Have you, Thomas, gotten ever? I know you're in transportation and you were in broker in
Yeah.
TQL. That was quite a span of your career. But have you ever like considered or even thought before, or did, like, get in a vehicle of yourself to do as a driver? Just, I don't
That's an
know.
interesting question. So I have briefly. So just like yourself, I love to travel. I've thought many of times of the van lifestyle. It's probably something I will explore. My girlfriend and I have extensively talked about buying an RV or a motorhome to travel the U.S. We both work remote. We both have our own businesses, so it makes a lot of sense. We want to have that freedom to be able to do those type of things. We both love nature and being out in nature and exploring and just kind of being on our own and doing our own thing. So yeah, I have given that thought in the past. Um, was it a lot of thought? Maybe not. I mean, I I kind of had thought maybe buy a Sprinter van. Now this is like 5, 6 years ago when I first got into the industry, was to maybe buy a Sprinter van, work to pay off the Sprinter van with working loads, and then once the van is paid off, travel. And you know,
You're literally speaking one of my like
yeah,
actual plans that I had throughout this journey as well. It's like it's exactly what I thought I was going to do too
yeah,
at
and
some point.
it's just interesting. I did give that some thought, and I'll be honest. At one point, I also had like had this vision. Maybe I still do. I don't know. Is I'd love to have someday, or I wanted to have someday, a fleet of refrigerated 26-foot Sprinter box trucks to be able to haul more produce, reefer, LTL, and specialize in that
Mm,
sort of freight. It's something that I struggled with moving as a broker. And I just think that having a stronger reefer LTL network would be very beneficial for not just the consumer, but for brokers, for shippers, for kind of the entire market. So that's
mm.
something that I had thought of in the past. But I'm not, not anytime soon, I don't think. But I will say I love to drive, so it's an interesting thought. I have done a lot of long trips. I've gone from Texas to Maine. That's 32 and a half hours. I did
Nice.
that in 4 days. So yeah, I mean, I love to drive. I love to travel like that, but I never had. I've given it some slight thought, but not like you said, like not a ton.
Yeah, yeah. I think when you're in a, and I wonder if other people wonder this too, when they're in transportation, they occupy different positions, whether they're,
Yeah,
working in the office as a broker or where maybe as a shipper, in a warehouse facility, or as a carrier who's managing a fleet, or whatever the case is, a dispatcher. But like if anybody, because we have an experience of somebody who was also a dispatcher with us, and this guy was a friend of mine from
yeah.
Ukraine. He was dispatching with us from Ukraine right before the war happened. I met him when I was in Ukraine, and during the Ukraine time, Ukraine war time, when it happened, he had to migrate, figure out how to survive because he was living literally in Kharkiv where the war occurred.
Oh wow,
But through the process, also, we were able to help him get out of the country and get to the U.S. through the program United for Ukraine. And so when he came to the U.S., he started again as a dispatcher. He came to New York, stayed with some of our common friends. But then he wanted to try to drive, and so right now he's driving as a hot shotter. He's currently not with us. He transitioned to go learn more, and maybe we'll
yeah.
do more business in the future. But he drove as a driver, and I remember
I
it
love
was
that.
so interesting because after driving for how long was it? Like close to about half a year. We would stay in contact all the time because again, he was also a buddy of mine.
Yeah,
And I'm like, so, Pasha, like, how is it like now that you've driven the loads that you used to dispatch to other drivers? And he said, man, I feel so horrible because I used to give these loads to some of our drivers that would do direct after direct. And I had like, he's like, I had no really conception of what it physiologically takes, what kind of toll it takes
yeah.
upon a person to do that, and now I do. Like I'd never do that. And it's funny enough because the first job I got him, the first load I got him, and he said, Andre, that was the hardest load you've ever given me. I thought I was going to pass out, die, because it was a direct load. He did, I think, close to about 1,500 miles,
Wow.
and he had no experience, and I didn't mean to do that for him. But
Right.
I remember myself. My hardest load was also one of the first ones. I physically had to load 350-pound
Wow.
gas tanks, and I had to load them without anybody assisting me and strap them while they were standing in the van.
Oh
Um,
gosh.
so yeah, it was quite an ordeal. So I thought, okay, is this like cold plunge? Like, all right, if you can cold plunge now and survive, everything else will be easy. So
It's all
unintentionally,
symptoms.
Yeah, unintentionally got him to do it, but he learned value in that. Like he learned value, and he said, "Man, I think if I go back to dispatching, I'll just be so much better because I can now have that language with dispatchers. I can
Mm,
understand their concerns more, and in fact, I can vouch for them and sort of be a rep for the drivers versus just telling, oh, brokers need this, brokers need that. Come on, comply with us because you're a
absolutely.
driver." There's value in that. I mean, personal experience and as well as someone that worked with
No,
us.
I completely agree. I think that on a larger level, I think that brokers would really benefit from seeing how drivers um how they have it, right? I think that they would really benefit from going on ride-alongs, seeing how it is with shippers, how that process is, and then, not just factoring in all of the driving and the stress and all of that that comes along with it, making sure the load is absolutely secure. I think that, and then on the flip side, like you said, and like he experienced, like Pasha experiences, was he went from the dispatching to driving side, so he also learned from the dispatcher side, like, wow, like I was not doing, the best things, but because he had just never experienced it, he had just kind of been, told, or had his lived experience with dispatching, and kind of applied what he thought was the right thing to do, and that was probably just to make the company as much money as possible, make the right loads, and blah blah. But it wasn't as beneficial to the driver. And I think that that's always a really good lived experience. And I think that people could really benefit from, whoever's in the industry could benefit from seeing the other side of the table, and living, having that lived experience, for even if it's several days, just having that lived experience is very valuable.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree with you, and I completely understand it's not easy to implement that, right? When you're hiring
For
somebody
sure.
to do, let's say, maybe a sales job or create business relationship with the customers, but all of a sudden they're like, "Wait, you got to also understand the drivers." That's a tough
It's tough.
stretch. I completely get it. Um, but in that way, I think when somebody does experience the shoes of people in different positions, you just kind of humble yourself in a way to understand, okay, just because I'm given a certain formula to go by, whether that's estimated time of arrival or maybe how long it takes to get to the place or a distance that it needs to take, and this is the shortest route, why is your driver taking a route of 200 more miles? Like, that's unacceptable. Or why is your driver still, like today we had a breakdown, and driver was stuck
Yeah.
from 1 a.m. till 8 in the morning, and the broker was like, man, look, you guys are like, why is it taking you so long? Well, so I go and find out, and I tell the broker, well, because the driver's stuck in a remote area, the assistance that is coming, is not available, and they're not
Mm,
helping him. He has to find somebody to get to the place to replace his tire, and there is no Uber, there is no Lyft. So he literally found
right.
a guy at a gas station, paid him $25, took his broken tire or his wheel in a trunk, went to the place, they repaired the tire, put it on a wheel, found somebody else, paid him money to get back, and like our driver did all that,
Yeah.
but it takes time, and so
Absolutely.
the understanding of that, that you can really meet some challenges on the road that completely throw off your all optimized process. And that's actually something interesting that last week I got to hear. Um, Eric Fuller, the ex CEO of US Express before they got
Oh yeah. Yeah.
acquired.
Yep.
So yeah, that's literally what he was telling. Like, there were so many people, tech people, asking him questions, and it was at the UTC University here in Chattanooga. So a lot
Hmm.
of, like, kind of startups based on technological advancements, and professors and students were like, well, why is it so difficult? Can't we just write a code that solves these issues? And he just stood there and was like, look, I understand a lot of things can be solved with tech, but transportation in itself is such a chaotic environment that is happening live right now, that all the things that are happening, there's no way to account for them and solve them with just the code that's gonna, like,
Yeah.
automatically optimize your performance, your ability to arrive to the pickup and delivery on time, or even recover it right at the moment. Like, it's a lot happening, especially when you're a big company, at live, and it was
Absolutely.
I don't think they were too excited to hear his response, but I got it. And I was like, yeah,
Absolutely,
I know
yeah.
what you were talking about.
Oh yeah, like if you're in the industry and you understand like how many moving pieces there are, and if you're not, if you're just in tech and you're like how can we solve these? Well, it's not every issue can be solved with tech, and I think that's very interesting. We've seen a lot of tech startups, tech based brokers, Convoy recently folding. So there's places for tech, and there's places for um, you know people, and I think that you have to realize when to utilize tech and people, and a combination of both. But Andre, I want to switch gears a little bit. I want to dive into what is now Hippix Logistics. Um, so let's dive into like what has Hippix Logistics turned into. So you were an owner operator. You had your sprinter. You were moving loads. What are you doing now? What has Hippix Logistics turned into since then?
um, Thanks for shifting the gears and getting into the nitty gritty things. Yeah, so I think Hippix Logistics right now is what it has been from the very beginning. To be honest
Hmm,
with you, we're
interesting.
advocates for drivers and for owner operators mainly, mostly. We in the beginning thought, okay, well maybe we can also build out our team of vehicles and go that route. But what naturally really occurred is because we were drivers, we saw a lot of gaps in between the
Mm,
companies that were working with us and us as drivers or owner operators, in a way that drivers are able to perform their jobs and just like feel good about that job. And so we just set out to say, okay, well, shoot, if we're stuck here and all the drivers are, not all, but I'll say a lot of people are very unhappy in what's going on because first of all, they're not told the truth about situations. Nobody really corresponds with them. And then when they want to escalate an issue, there's nobody to really talk to other than
yeah.
a dispatcher who doesn't know, or a tracker who doesn't really know anything either, because it's a wholesome issue that needs to be addressed by maybe management. And
Hmm.
we had difficult time with getting any kind of reasonable resolutions to what seems to be not a difficult issue, um, like maybe why am I not getting my detention pay, or why am I being constantly asked to provide tracking to you guys? Simple things. And as a company, we sometimes run into those issues as well. But we're open to discuss this, and so we
Yeah.
simply set out on a path to provide and fill the gap and
Hmm.
be that company that supports the drivers and is like right here, right in front of them, and like all the people we work with, and I'm hoping this can stay true for as long as possible. They're able to talk to anybody from the person that is tracking them to the owners of the company.
Yeah.
They can talk to me, to my partners, Joseph Carnes and Gianna Court, um, anybody, because sometimes to get the answer that is gonna make sense and is going to take somebody in a different position than the dispatcher who's trying to book you the jobs live and whose full focus is to keep you loaded,
Absolutely.
right? And so, what happened for us and where we are now is we are mainly, our assets, and I would say our investment isn't really vehicles, is people. And yes, we
Hmm.
have our small fleet of our own vehicles and drivers, but like our assets is humans. And so we have right now we're working with 150, close to 150 plus drivers that are owner operators, and we have over 5,000 people that applied to work with us.
Wow.
Literally, like these people were not targeted. These people were not advertised to. We didn't reach out. Like these people came to us
That's
and said,
amazing.
Hipex Logistics, we heard good things about you. Would like to work with you. Um, and it's either word of mouth, or we've been endorsed by some of the other owner operators that are in the social media space, but it's because of the personal experience that they've experienced with Hipex Logistics, who then they put out a good word for us, and these people saw it and wanted to work with us. So it's really I think, maybe in the future it'll change to where we're going to be able to occupy more of a central position, and sort of say, okay, like we as much as emphasis and effort we're taking to cover our drivers, we're also doing on the customer side right now, which is
Yeah.
mostly brokers. Um, but because of the experience that we've seen as drivers and now the position we occupy, we think drivers are underappreciated. They're under endorsed, as companies don't really take their sides, and they're undervalued. And so we really want to bring up the morale in the community of drivers, at least in expediting, which is where we mainly perform. That's cargo van, sprinters,
Sure.
small straight chalks, and we're moving into a large straight chalk area as well. Um, we want to be that, and so we had one owner operator from Florida, Miami, and um, I had multiple conversations with him, and he's like, "Man, like, why don't you guys just get vehicles of your own?" And said, "Okay, well, cool, we could do that, but do you understand at the moment we do that, our effort and emphasis on making sure you're taken care of is going to shift from you to now us taking care of our vehicles and our equipment
Yeah.
and our drivers, and you're going to be, even though working with us, you're not a priority anymore, and we're in competition with you. Like, is that what you really want? Because for us it seems like that undermines really the whole value proposition that we
Mm.
discovered and built upon our company. And so, yeah, I mean, it's
I
drivers, it's
love that.
people, and as long as we can, we believe as long as we can really hone in on making sure these people are valued, they'll be able to provide better service to the
Absolutely.
customers that we work with. And it seems like it's a reciprocal, wholesome relationship. It's not just, and I've had these interesting conversations with brokers at times, who are like, look, we want you to have full control of everybody you work with. And it's not a spoken sentence, but it implies
Yeah.
if you having control of your people, we're in control of you, and that's okay. I get it, and we're about that too. But I believe that you don't have to go by control. You don't have to get the control by just simply having the people that will perform for you whatever you demand of them, because their paycheck is
Mm.
depends on you. Even
Yeah.
though owner operator's paycheck depends, there's some sort of sense of entitlement and some sort of sense of ownership there. They're owner operator. They pay for their equipment. They're in charge of somewhat their business side. And so if we can create these relationships with owner operators that are holistic on all the levels,
Mm.
and yeah, it's not going to be perfect, but we want to make sure we hit those marks, the requests that drivers need, and the concerns that arise. I think it's a win-win because everyone has skin in the game,
Yeah,
and
I
you
agree.
know it doesn't have to be that or that, but that's the route that we're taking. Is we're working with people that are already there that need representation, and we'd love to be that for them.
No, I love that because I think that there are so many, the drivers and smaller carrier groups are really like more of like the forgotten group, and they make up the biggest portion of trucking. Like even the bigger fleets of OTR 53 dry vans and semis, truck drivers make up, or owner operators make up like 90% of the market. So and there's really no advocacy for those drivers, right? So I really love what you guys are doing and kind of the mission you guys have taken. Let's move into a kind of some of what I would call like the ebbs and flows that you guys have been through since starting your business, and kind of some of those founding issues that come up with small business and small trucking companies. Can you talk about some of those pivots and those ebbs and flows you've had to kind of go through?
Yeah, that's a great question. Ebbs and flows. I mean, so ebbs and flows are definitely, you can look at it from micro level or you can look at them from macro level, right? And a micro
Yeah.
level is literally just daily decisions and daily mistakes, errors, or, losses and wins that occur on a daily basis. And those are, think, those still occur, although we have been fortunate to be able to implement certain practices and be able to afford them to minimize those errors.
Right.
Like our dispatchers have been tracking the loads for a long time. Every time an issue would occur, it was always dispatchers and admin on. I mean, we would be up at any given time, in the morning, at night, for the first at least year and a half, probably even 2 years. Um,
Yeah.
Anytime, I mean, always. And so, you kind of, you have to implement some changes. We knew that, we need to figure out how to be able to afford a tracking team. And so we went as a company, we had company meetings, we talked with our dispatch team, and we're just open and transparent. And we're like, look, we can't right now afford this. What would you guys rather do? Would you rather be able to make the money that you guys are making, or perhaps, give up a certain percentage share for us to be able to afford a tracking team? Here is what the benefit is going to be for us to have tracking team. And then over time, when we can afford, maybe we can offset that percentage. So
Yeah.
there are these strategies that we've implemented to kind of minimize the ebbs and flows. I would probably ebbs and flows on daily basis, but there are also bigger ones, right? Like the fact that we're
Definitely.
dealing with an economy and a market of kind of 4-year cyclical span that not much
Mhm.
really we can do about, but rather be maybe conservative and see that, okay, right now we're not in a position to try test things out that cost us money and see if any of them work in terms of like maybe tech devices or different platforms. We're going to be conservative. We're going to do what we know, bread and butter. Come to supper, and we'll leave the caviar and other things to other times. And
Yeah.
so. Um, and the reason I say caviar is because I'm from Eastern Europe, so caviar is like the
Oh yeah.
delicacy back where I'm from. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah, and so specifically this year, we had some significant ebbs and flows. We had, as I mentioned earlier, between our conversations, we had an attack on our company by a competitor whom we never heard of, didn't know anything about them, who completely misrepresented us, decided to
Mm.
put out a whole piece on us, misused the Selectus notification system and sent out blasts to all the users of Selectus, which is basically most of our companies, because that's the platform we operate.
Yeah.
It's sort of it's kind of like maybe DAT truck stop, like those boards. Um,
Correct.
and so that was a big hit because all of a sudden, this blast goes out. People are, watching the video thing that he put out, and there are complaints coming. Oh my God, Hippix Logistics does all these things which are not true. And then Selectus does an investigation on us. We supply all the evidence and information to show that claims were completely falsified.
Right.
And then even my reach out to like, hey, I'm to the guy, like, look, you're welcome to come. Let's talk. Like, I'll show you everything that for you to see that I think you made some significant mistakes. It would be really nice for you to be honest about the fact that maybe you made mistakes. And if not, like,
Right.
let's, none of that really came through. And so, so that was a significant, a really big ebb and flow. I mean, up until May, we were on a
Yeah.
growth span. I think, if I'm not mistaken, Joe, my partner, said I think we were on a span between 8 and 11% growth on a monthly basis.
Wow.
We were doing really well. We were onboarding more people. We were improving our onboarding procedure. We were working with more brokers. We were just growing as a company. It was really nice. Like it just felt really good. We were able to get more family involved in our business. And
Wow.
then when that hit, we lost, I think, like literally the next month in June, we lost about 45 to 48% of revenue, just 1 month.
Wow.
Because we got shut down. We had to show that, all that was not true,
Right.
complain and all that stuff. And then we slowly started we just stuck to our guns. We talked to all the drivers and we said, look, we're really sorry. We may not be able to book you as many jobs right now because we're going through a tough time. And, a lot of drivers were understanding.
That's
Of
great.
course, some was like, look, we're sorry. We may have to go work with somebody else, or, and expediting is also common where you can work with multiple companies at the same
Yeah.
time. It's not always, it's sometimes frowned upon, but it's a completely legal thing because it's non-commercial vehicles as long as you're operating a vehicle under 10,000 pounds. And so we were understanding that too, but there was again a conversation and context and something that we pride ourselves for, like communicating with people, no matter again at what
Absolutely.
level you are, and just telling people this is what's happening, these are potential problems, here's what we need to do. The other cool thing that happened is we've learned that because of a lot of fraud that happened, has been happening during COVID time. I'm sure you're aware. I've heard you
Oh yeah.
address this also quite a few times. Thousands of lost freight, parcels that end up in China or somewhere in Eastern Europe as well. Um, we've learned that certain practices are being implemented in the industry, and because we've learned that, we just said, okay, well, we're a small company still. We can implement
Yeah.
these changes. Let's do them now, so that when
Mm,
things happen, maybe in half a year, we're already ahead of that,
yeah.
ahead of the curve, and we're up to par, and we can expand our business because we're now not only complying with legal, regulations of FMCSA, or DOT, we're now also complying with business practices of the companies that are hiring us, which we also
Yep.
learned this year. Those two are not always one and the same thing. In fact, a lot of times they divert, and
Oh
FMCSA
yeah.
will say, we don't know why these companies are asking you for that. And the companies that we work with, they're like, look, we just want to make sure we're safe, and we haven't had, much relationship with you, so please, like, either comply with us, our request, or we're not going to give
Sorry.
you this.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I get it. I understand, because nobody wants to get the short end of the stick. So yeah, I mean, ebbs and flows. I would say that's pretty much maybe a theme of maybe not even only us, but just as a transportation as a whole. And
Oh
I
yeah.
guess the better surfer you are, the better you can you can stay on top of the wave, for the
No,
longer.
I agree with that. I love that analogy, man. Let's switch it up a little bit more because we've been talking about like Selectus and technology. There's not you and I have talked about this kind of in depth a little bit, and there's not much like technology um, geared towards expediting.
Hmm.
What do you think the reasoning behind that is, and what tools do you kind of see a need for in the market?
Great question. Yes, I would agree with you. Not a lot really has been going on. And if you want to find out technological tools for expediting, you'd have to either search, or companies would have to find you because they know that you do expediting.
Yeah,
Um, it's a good question. Why? Um, so, like, for example, freight waves, right? They
yeah,
have a lot of data, and they don't ever derive their data on their own. They use third party resources because they're not, let's say, a DAT, right? That books jobs.
yeah.
They're not like a load board. But then at the same time, there's also DAT, a place that is a widely open load board that, you and I and anyone can sign up, I guess, as long as you have, the authority and proper credentials. But you can subscribe, and right away you get data, right? What's your rate per mile? What's this lane from specific location to specific location based on your truck type, so on and so forth. And maybe the time of the day of the week, the week of the month.
Yeah.
Um, and that is seems to be so crucial and important, in my opinion, that I don't really even know why in expediting that has not been implemented. And I don't have access to anyone kind of in a higher up position within Selectus, but to me, like, Selectus should do that. Selectus
Mm.
should implement that and kind of be like DAT or Drug Stop, where they're providing real data to companies, and companies, all they have to do is just book loads on Selectus, which they already do. Maybe there are some technological reasons for it, as far as the way jobs get booked. That's also possible because in expediting, a lot of stuff gets booked through emails. Where, like, I know with DAT and
Yeah.
maybe in traditional semi trucks, it's kind of a lot of calls, right? If I'm not mistaken. Um,
Yeah, so I know like a lot of the ways that even DAT and a lot of these other places, freight waves, anyone who's providing data on if they own their own data, truck stop DAT, they can provide a lot of their own information that comes from their boards, whereas whereas freight waves is getting that information from third parties, but a lot of that information that anyone is receiving is a lot of like EDI tenders and
mm,
electronic data.
hmm.
So I think and you kind of said it, is that a lot of expediting still goes through like email processes, and I think that is maybe where there is some of that disconnect, where a lot of these maybe companies who are looking for expediters aren't always like, yeah, we're doing 1,000 expediting loads, but they end up that they might end up needing 100 loads moved by an expediter, but they end up just doing that through email instead of their normal channels of setting up, rates and EDIs for spot market and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
I think that maybe it just comes down to maybe there's just not enough data in place, or not enough
Mm.
data maybe in the markets because of, um, I think maybe just for the lack of technology to capture some of that expediting data. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think you kind of hit it on the nail. Listening while you're speaking, processing that, I probably would say email is probably the reason for that, because there is
Yeah.
actually a company. There is two companies that we're aware of, and that we've been in conversations with them, called Front and Everest, and
Mm,
they're very much in the expediting industry. I would say those two, and also the company that we've been working with, called LoadHive. We've been a paying user of LoadHive. Those three that I'm aware of are kind of stepping up and covering some of the areas where like technology really helps. So like education wise,
mm,
in terms of knowing the rates, being able to navigate your email in a much more efficient way. That's Front. And then Load Hive, that allows, like in our case, it allows us to realize that, and your drivers can some of your drivers can be knowledgeable enough to know, and I would say not drivers, owner operators. This is where the good thing about
yeah.
owner operator comes in. You know your bottom dollar. You know what you need to make in order
Mm,
to pay your expense. Because if you don't, you're not going to last. So you're more educated than the driver who's driving a company's vehicle in that way. And
yeah.
so Load Hive in that case was able to allow us to realize, okay, well, some of these drivers are wanting to provide us their rates. They're willing to do it, and they would rather work on their own terms. And so they're sort of like becoming these free agents, people that are more responsible for their at least initial bid, and then we as a company
Mm,
receive that whatever that they're interested in, and then process it further and either correct it, tell them, hey, maybe this is too high, maybe this is too low, or great, sending it further. Um, where Front and Everest, it's interesting because of that email. What you just mentioned, email is sort of this outdated platform in a way of booking jobs. The interesting thing that Everest and Front do is Front lays over your email as a
mm,
kind of overlay. It makes your email a lot more efficient in a way that you can categorize. You can have group based inboxes. You can almost have like a tasks thing, that tasks list to do within these jobs. But it also works with Everest, to where if you have two of those systems, and they have made it such a way to where now within your Front, you now have the widget, so to speak, which is Everest, and it tells you actually the
okay.
rates. So your email comes in, and your email is showing you as a job, but not only as an email, it's already within your platform as a job.
Mm,
And Everest looks at it and says, okay, we've done this job this many times through our clients. And based on our clients, we're giving you a rate that's most likely this rate is. And there's two different rates they provide you. I don't remember one of them, but one of them is literally just what this job has been booked for. I think one is by the volume of overall customers, and one is by the
okay.
history of you as a company. And so then you
Oh,
get two
interesting.
rates: what you booked it for before, at all, throughout all of your history, and then
Yep.
what the all of the clients of Everest did. And
Mm,
so it's a very helpful technology, but it's not as readily available as a DAT. You don't just go and you pay
right.
150, $300 a month for a user, and you start it, boom, and you're getting already rates, because again, those are not really load boards. They're
Right.
utilizing some data, but it's more nuanced, because now you're
Mm,
working with emails with thousands and thousands and thousands of emails that come in every day that they have to process. So they have to see your
right.
volume of how much clicks you're getting, how many emails you're receiving, to know even what to price it. So they're definitely, I think, are kind of positive way attacking the non-technological aspect of expediting. Um, but it'd be nice if it was just a lot easier available. And I think they're going to get to that place, and maybe there are going to be other companies that are going to step in and do that. Um, but I think, yeah, like an email is probably the reason why, we're dealing with this. And to some degree, I think it's kind of cool because it's like, yeah, well, I don't have to be on calls all the time because the moment I'm on
Yeah,
this call, nothing else exists. But if I'm sending this email, I can kind of multitask, a couple of things, versus being on a
definitely.
call. But then again, you're sacrificing this optimization and ability to get the results of what that rate should be and what it is. Because I'll be honest with you, there was an
Yeah,
interesting post on LinkedIn, and I think, Thomas, you know who it is, and I think we're all connected on LinkedIn. And I'm not going to say anything against him, this person, but um, he was congratulated by the majority of the people in his comments. I'm assuming these are people that are connected to him, for booking a reefer load for $1,300 on the lane that he usually books for $1,900. And he was
mm,
basically making the post, look, I'm a great negotiator and I'm business savvy. This is what you need to do in order to make your money. And he says, basically, don't ever propose a rate to the carrier. Let them ask them what would they want to book it for. And you're going to counteract their proposal if they go too high. And so this carrier said, I can do it for 1,300. And then he said, I think it's a great rate. I'm not even gonna, uh, I'm not gonna counteract you
mm,
and basically go into a bidding war with you. But in reality, my personal take is, maybe this driver or this company, maybe it's in the small owner operator, didn't have the technology, didn't have the understanding of what actually that lanes go. So in a way, if that's true, that's kind of taking an advantage, in my personal opinion. You're literally taking advantage of a company, or maybe one two unit carrier who is unaware that this lane could go for a lot higher. In fact, you
yeah,
are aware, but you're going to make 500-600 bucks on this and say, man, that's a win. I'm sitting here in the office and I made that money, when this driver is probably, who knows, could probably have a breakdown, whatever the case is. And the expense is going to be a lot higher, but he's not making on this lane the money. And, you potentially also could have sacrificed the good relationship with the carrier, because if this carrier talks, and just like anybody else, brokers
yeah.
talk with brokers, carriers with
Everyone
carriers,
talks.
drivers with drivers, he might find out that, oh shoot, are you kidding me? This company did book me this rate. I'm new to this, or I didn't know any better. I'm never working with this company again. And so in my world, like, that's not really, I don't see that as a congratulation for something that you've really achieved in your negotiation skills. As
Mm,
just a matter of knowing better, while taking advantage of somebody that did know any better. And that's, but everybody will have their own opinion, and that's okay too.
yeah, no, absolutely. And as we wrap up, Andre, I just want to say I've had a really pleasure like talking with you today and learning more about like what you're doing at Hippix and how you guys have evolved over the years. I really love your shirt. And I'd love for you to turn around and show the back because I think it's really cool and interesting as well.
Sure. Yeah. It's so Hippix Logistics is in our DNA, and these are two letters X. Sometimes people don't think, and it is just hippie logistic, but that's okay. That's a bit of a graphical. But in the back, we have an endorsement,
Oh,
and
now this guy looks like he loves you guys. Um, now who is that, Andre? Tell the listeners or the watchers, if you guys are watching the episode, who is that awesome gentleman?
yeah, so I have a good friend of mine, mentor, and he mentored me on martial arts and just like philosophy in life. An older guy in Nashville, Tennessee, Jim. And Jim told me once, Andre, when you get served a pile of crap, you just water it and grow a flower. And so this is really that. At the back of our shirt is, this is the guy from the company who attacked us in May. And so instead of kind of, getting into the whole nasty game of he said this, I said that, this and that, we just simply made an announcement, we addressed with our announcement, going over the claims. We are, still working as a company and providing proof to anybody that ever has anything to say to us in regards to the video he put out. And I just put him out there as our endorser. He can be our mascot. I don't know. A person that says, hey, I love these guys, even though in reality he doesn't. But like in my mind, there's more value for us as a company to get when we're going to think of him as somebody who really cares about us, and turn things around, in a positive light.
Yeah, absolutely. You made lemonade from your situation. I love that, man.
There you go. Yep.
Again, Andrei, I appreciate you coming on the show. Where can people find you if they're looking to find more about Hippix Logistix, or just want to follow you a little bit on social media and get a little bit more of you?
Yeah. So we're very, very new in social media because we've been so focused on building a business. And one of the things we didn't do early on is build our social presence. So that's where kind of, the company that attacked us took our spotlight. But since then, we put out one video on YouTube. We have a YouTube channel for Hippix Logistix. We're hoping to start putting out more content. And again, thank you for even, bringing me to your show and share a little bit about our history, because that's helpful as well. But we are on LinkedIn as a company, Hippix Logistix, on Facebook. We are on YouTube. And again, for us, this is just the beginning. We're new, we're young. And hopefully we'll be more in front of people and just bringing value to others.
I have no doubt about that, Andrei. And if you guys are looking to learn more about Andrei or Hippix Logistix, I'll have everything and all of Andrei's links in today's show notes. If you guys like today's podcast, make sure you guys give it a like and review, or a thumbs up if you're watching on YouTube. Don't forget to check out our newsletters. Those do drop Monday and Wednesday. ThinkFreight.io. And we'll catch you guys in the next episode. Thanks, Andrei.
Thank you. See ya.